Massive weekend for two Arizona football teams, and we're going to talk about which one is more impressive where they're standing. I'm just glad we could have a happy conversation on another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
Brought to you by Branded Bills. Elevate your brand with Branded Bills, as I am doing right now. The perfect headwear and apparel. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. And of course, we are in Studio K, presented by Circle K. Join the inner circle today. I'm joined by Bo Brack of PHNX Cardinals. I am Erik Ruby. And over the weekend, two big wins for not only the Arizona Cardinals, but the Arizona State Sun Devils. Of course, ASU moving to 6-2 on the season with a dominant road win. Now bowl eligible a year after just being 3-9, bottom of the barrel in the Pac-12. And the Arizona Cardinals moving above 500, sole possession of the NFC West with a dominant 29-9 performance at home against the Chicago Bears. Before we pit them against each other, Bo, can we just sit back and celebrate?
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should, because it's like arbitration with your star player, right? Like, you got to poke holes in it to really kind of represent your true side. And yeah, before we get into it, I mean, this is an unbelievable time to be a football fan in the Valley. And for the Arizona Cardinals to be upstart along with the ASU Sun Devils, and for ASU to be activated finally, and it only took a short, season and a half. It's unbelievable. And now I think that the real excitement behind both of these programs kind of trending in the right direction is the thought that, hey, this isn't just going to be a flash in the pan.
Right.
There's something being built here. The foundation's been laid for both Kenny Dillingham and Jonathon Gannon, the respective head coaches for their respective football teams, to be consistent contenders. I think that's great.
Well, actually, instead of pitting them against each other, let's draw parallels the whole time, and then at the end we can have a little conversation.
We need to draw a line in the sand, and you need to be on one side, and I need to be on one side.
See, that's what I did with last week's Southwest Bias with Stephen Prejean Gardner. We talked about benching Bradley Beal, and I had to get my villain hat on.
Yeah.
And I want to step out of the villain role this time, okay? Let's talk about parallels, and let's talk from the top, because these are two programs or a franchise. It's kind of weird when you talk about them at the same time, who found themselves doing almost everything wrong at a certain point. It just felt like the infrastructure, everything surrounding them, they just had the wrong people. For the Cardinals, Steve Keim, Cliff Kingsbury. For ASU, Ray Anderson, Herm Edwards. Now that skin is shed, it appears that both replacements for those regimes, Graham Rossini, Kenny Dillingham, I almost called him Steve Keim again, Monty Ossenfort, and Jonathon Gannon, it feels like they're in good hands. And as important as the players are, and as important as it is to just have a good team, I don't think any of that matters if you don't have the right people leading them. And I think it's safe to say that with the Cardinals, Jonathon Gannon and Monty Ossenfort are doing the right things.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And also, as far as these two football entities, I guess we'll call it, trying to find common footing between the pro and the college game. You have Michael Crow at ASU, right?
Yeah, the two Michaels.
You got Mike. Yeah, exactly. You got Mike's there and Bidwell, who, respective fan bases are like, well, you're never going to be successful with those two people in place. But that's not true. We've seen, bad ownership, bad leadership at the top teams be able to win in spite of that. I mean, look, the Clippers were a playoff team during Donald Sterling, his unceremonious, cast off from the NBA. Michael Bidwell's not in the same conversation there. Neither is Michael Crow. Most of their polarizing moves are, from their way lighter positions, right? But
it's more about specifically how the sports side of things are run, and not a humanity side of things.
But what they've been able to do is find decision makers as far as program building and organizational building, that they've just said, okay, this is your job, build this thing up. And Monty Ossenfort, Jonathon Gannon, Graham Rossini, and a lot of Kenny Dillingham have done and taken and run with it.
Well, I think they had to learn the hard way. Both of these entities had to see the bottom of the barrel.
Tough lessons in there for sure.
But yes, I mean, the Cardinals got ahead of themselves extending both Keim and Kingsbury, and we did a Southwest Bias on if that was the worst decision in Arizona sports history, period. And another one up there is the hiring of Herm Edwards, is the investment in that, and then Ray Anderson as well, and the handling behind all of that. And you saw fans just completely storm away from these franchises and be so out and just be upset, mad, angry, because it wasn't just the fact that you were bad, it was the fact that you were incompetent. Like, it's okay to be bad if there's a plan. It's okay to be bad if you see the light at the end of the tunnel. ASU last year, 3-9, it sucked. But the entire theme along the way was Kenny Dillingham is doing it the right way, building the right way. First year under Jonathon Gannon and Monty Ossenfort was a tough year for the Cardinals, but you felt like they had it in the right direction. And that's why you can get through that point. Right. But you can't get through the lows when it's also like, I have no faith that this is going to get better. So that's like check mark number one. You build the foundation, you get the infrastructure. That buzzword we've used around the Cardinals so many times, I think applies to ASU. Another similarity between the two is the fact that you have star players that are returning from like a quote different era, right? You're not just completely starting from scratch. For the Cardinals, it's Kyler Murray. For this Sun Devils, it's Cam Skattebo. And having Cam Skattebo around and having that kind of star to help sustain the success, somebody who can on a day-to-day basis take your team to the next level. I think having that top end talent and people who have seen the depths, people who have seen the darkness, and then turned around and now is succeeding in the light, I think that galvanizes a team for sure, in a sense, and especially adds a little bit of level of maturity for maybe somebody like a Kyler Murray.
Well, I mean, as far as decision makers, GMs, head coaches, like they can be at the top of their game, but their messaging can only resonate so much within those locker rooms. You need a player to be in there also kind of echoing what's being said. And I think that Kyler Murray, James Conner, Cam Skattebo, like even before that, Jalen Conyers, like there were guys that were kind of like really standing and just echoing what their head coaches are saying, and it's resonating. And it's, as far as the culture, it's slowly building. There's buy-in from both programs.
Yeah, you saw it with Kyler Murray in the offseason and the way that they've handled him. I mean, investing in him and showing like, hey, we're going to go to your statue unveiling for Oklahoma. Like,
we're going to empower you. We're going to embolden you.
We're going to draft a wide receiver in the top 5. We're going to draft an offensive lineman in the top 10 the year before that. Right? We are going to protect you. We're going to give you weapons. And I know that people are maybe licking their lips to see a little bit more Marvin Harrison Jr. and see him a little bit more featured, but the messaging is still there, and the fact that we're going to take care of our guy. You are our guy. And it's a little bit different with college sports and NIL and everything, but you've seen that with ASU investing in Cam Skattebo. But I think where these paths kind of veer off a little bit is, while there is a talent deficit in certain points of the Cardinals, there are a lot of players that have been around for a while and have been, impact players, a Buda Baker, a James Conner, a Kyler Murray. For the Sun Devils, you're looking at a roster made up primarily of transfers or players who didn't play the year before. You have a coaching staff that is grabbed from all different ways. You have a new offensive coordinator this year. Like there is almost zero continuity, including your starting quarterback is a redshirt freshman. Right. So you're kind of learning and getting through that on a different way than the Cardinals, who, I mean, again, keep on referencing old Southwest bias. After the Rams game, we talked about how much like established talent it felt like this Cardinals offense had. Of course, power behind, the likes of a James Conner, and you flip it over to defensive line, edge rushers. Sure, you need more out of them. But Buda Baker, Jalen Thompson, like those are guys that you can rely on, especially Buda in the NFL. And you've seen that. You didn't have a lot of that going in for ASU this year. So for me, if we're trying to start slowly ranking and comparing,
I can already see you laying the groundwork here, trying to make your case for ASU.
I think it's a check for ASU, because what is the quarterback? The extension of the head coach, right? An extension of the offensive coordinator, a culture setter, right? Sam Leavitt was born in 2004. Okay. Like 2004, this is his first college season. And he is able to galvanize and lead this team full of players that not only didn't play together last year, but players that he didn't even play with last year.
Look, I mean, it's not unprecedented, though. I mean, that a redshirt freshman quarterback has had success at the college ranks. It happens every year in NCAA football, right? And then also
here we go. Here we go. We're revving it up now.
You're starting to see teams that are able to be built through the portal. So, like, absolutely, like, are they the exception in 2024? For sure. Like that's no way to make a consistent living, right? But to be able to do it that way and have success, like that's a testament to Kenny Dillingham and the players that he brought in. I'll give you credit for that for sure.
So then what's then the counter for the Cardinals?
The counter for the Arizona Cardinals, and why I'm more impressed with their run, is that they're doing it in the NFC West. They are 2-0 in the division, and they've found different ways to scratch and claw and win football games, 3 fourth quarter comebacks, and a pair of walk-off wins with a replacement kicker. I mean, as much as we want to talk about established stars, there's still a ragtag bunch of groups of young up-and-coming players that you have to give credit to Gannon and his staff for developing and putting in place to be successful and having that success. So, like, the Arizona Cardinals are not in the Big 12. Like, the Big 12 has been down, right?
It's pretty good this year.
It's okay.
It's shocking this year.
Is it in the conversation to have, a full-on, like, college football playoff, like, top team? Because the Arizona Cardinals for the last half decade are going up against a perennial Super Bowl
It depends
contender.
on how you feel about a BYU who's 8-0 on the season. Iowa State just has one loss, which was recently. I mean, you're not talking about like a top 4 seed. You're not talking about your Georgias.
And that's my point, where you've got, I think, the Niners who are always in the conversation. Now, I know that they have been bitten by the injury bug.
I'm about to say, record-wise, the NFC West is not looking fantastic.
It's not. It's an eroding division, which I think is also part of, what's shocking about this football season. But for the Arizona Cardinals to capitalize and take care of business, winning on the road at San Francisco, beating a Sean McVay-led Rams team for the first time ever since he took the reins in 2017, changing the narrative, I think that's what's most impressive to me, and it gives the Cardinals a slight edge, in my opinion, over the Sunday.
Well, let's go back to, holding hands through this and getting through this together, because I think exercising old demons and establishing like new expectations is something both of these teams have done. And I'll explain exactly what I mean after I remind you that this episode of Southwest Bias is brought to you by Branded Bills. I am wearing Branded Bills right now. I'm wearing Branded Bills basically every single day just because they're so comfortable. They have such a good style about them too. I can work out in them. I can podcast in them. I can do anything that I want in my Branded Bills hats. That's because they have everything.
And
Snapbacks, truckers, fitted, beanies, tees, and then get your own brand on it. I know we're getting custom PHNX stuff. I've been saying it for a while. It's in the works. We're going to get it. It's going to look awesome. Super excited if you want your brand to stand apart. Let's say you want some good team building. Get everybody a nice hat. Like, I love a hat. If I was working at another place, said, hey, man, like, we got you a nice hat.
Right.
I'd be so happy.
Yep.
Get your team a nice hat. They have partnerships with ASU and U of A. They're a local company out of Mesa, Arizona. You go to brandedbills.com. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. And then a reminder, as both of these entities, franchises, programs hit the floor, take a look at yours. And is it up to par? Is it what you want it to be? The answer is probably not. And if that is true, you want to check out our friends over at Empire today, because they make it easy, quick, and convenient. But it's not just that, because then they would guarantee you the lowest price. They would get in and out in a day, and then your flooring would be terrible. It wouldn't match, and it wouldn't even live up to what you need it to do, because flooring, pretty important. You use it a lot, even when you're not thinking about it. That's why they have the virtual floor visualizer. You can check out exactly how it looks before you invest the money and the time to get it installed in your home. Plus, you can get a free in-home estimate today, because they want to get this done for you as fast as possible. And while they won't promise you the lowest floor, we can get you a good chunk of change off. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. The Arizona Cardinals exercising the Los Angeles Rams demon, almost the NFC West demon as well. Arizona State Sun Devils picked up their first win over an SEC program, right? They're moving away from the Pac-12, the dysfunction. They're moving into the Big 12. They are able to even get a road win when they weren't able to do that earlier this season, taking down a Utah who's usually been atop of the Pac-12 and doing it in a way that you said is sustainable. Like these are exercising of the demons for ASU and for the Cardinals that it feels like is giving everybody like a breath of fresh air. Yeah. Almost.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not fraudulent wins, and like, sure, like you took down Utah with Cam Rising. He looked like he had no business being on a football field.
Falling.
But yeah, you took care of business. You didn't let that be an ugly loss. Like they won that football game. They won it handily, and they were able to check that box. And I think the same can be said for the Cardinals. Like the Cardinals, like nobody's going to care that the Rams were down 3 offensive linemen starting off.
No, you won the game.
Yeah, you smacked them around just like they did the Chicago Bears. And, they've also faced some adversity as far as, facing a Dolphins team that should have been energized by the return of their quarterback. And that nearly was, a loss for the Cardinals. But once they kind of had that, they found that little sliver to get a win, they took it, right? And like to capitalize on that, and both programs doing that, that's a credit, I think, to their coach in instilling that never say die or quit attitude, which
I think
it's silly, but it's very real.
Sometimes cliches are cliches and they're boring, whatever. And sometimes like cliches actually make sense and fall into what you're talking about rather perfectly. I think with these two teams, there's a lot of cliches that apply to them. What I think has ASU fans most excited about, and I feel that way with Cardinals as well. I mean, I'm a fan of both. They haven't just played some unsustainable, perfect level of football, right? To where you could just say, well, the fall off is coming at some point, right?
It's not 2021.
Yeah, you still feel like there are building blocks and that they can get better. With ASU sitting at 6-2, I would say until this recent win, 42-21 over Oklahoma State, that included 2 hour and 39-minute rain delay at halftime. Besides that game, I don't think they played at all three levels a nearly perfect game.
Right.
And ASU, they'd miss another field goal. You want to talk about kicking, different story. But 6-2, and I would say 1 out of those 6 wins that they've played like really well all around, not a lot of holes.
Right.
And so you can look at that and say, okay, going forward, you take on a Kansas State who's ranked 22nd in the country. You take on a BYU, 9 in the country right now, which is insane that they're a top 10 team in the country. And you can realistically say, hey, maybe we haven't played a team as good as this.
Yeah.
But we can play better than we've played. And for the Cardinals, I mean, you start off on the brink of disaster.
Yeah.
Right? Really tough schedule. But you fight through. Now you're above 500. You look at the rest of your season and you say, man, we could be 6-4 preparing for another Seattle game and talking playoffs, man.
You can make an addition before the deadline, which we'll be talking about on PHNX Cardinals.
And you're doing it all with a talent deficit, like you said, on the defensive line.
And you haven't seen a single snap from your 27th overall Darius Robinson, that 27th overall pick. And like, can you get him healthy enough to when you return from the bye and you game plan the hell out of the Seattle Seahawks, you're in a really good position to move to 7-4.
Which is crazy considering how they started.
And then you look at the rest of the schedule, as you mentioned, it thins out. Like it was a gauntlet to start. It was a top 5 schedule as far as toughest to now it becomes a bottom of the barrel schedule, you know, bottom 5. And you've got the Patriots, the Panthers of the world, where you can start to add wins as long as you just take care of business.
Some of the teams the Cardinals played throughout the season so far, the Bills, the Lions, the Commanders, the 49ers, Packers, and then everybody else is not that great, right? But going forward, Jets, Seahawks, Vikings, Seahawks, Patriots, Panthers, Rams, 49ers. Mm-hmm. Is there a game in there that you're like, there's no way the Arizona Cardinals can win that game?
No, I mean, I think the one that looks the most challenging right now on paper is going on the road to Minneapolis.
I think so as well.
I mean, they were able to rebound on Sunday Night Football, and I think that's a challenging game. And then we'll see what the state of the Rams are in Week 17 and the state of the Niners are in Week 18, like what those two teams have to play for. Like, if there's a lot on the line, I expect, this trending up Rams team to be ready to play in Week 17. Right. And if the Niners are in, contention for a playoff spot, anywhere from playing for the playoffs to playing for a first round bye or whatever it may be, wherever they may be, like the only thing that would bode well for the Cardinals is they're completely out.
Right. Yeah. And I mean,
which is possible too.
It's possible. You're going to have to wait and see. But, the Cardinals been doing it with a skeleton of a defensive line, something that they might be looking to address and they should be looking to address. But also, if you talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. and this offense, it seems like week in and week out, we're talking about this offense not hitting the ceiling that it could hit. And so if you make a defensive move, and you continue to figure out how to best utilize Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, James Conner, and Kyler Murray all at the same time. I mean, you're talking about a team that's really hard to beat. And then the parallels with ASU there is, while there's not any in-season trades that you could take, this is the roster that Kenny Dillingham built coming out of a 3-9 season. Coming off of one of the most embarrassing seasons that you could imagine because of the situation that they were put in by A, the previous regime, and then B, by just luck, a lack of it. And injuries. And now you're moving Big 12, having a minimum bowl eligible 6-win season. And now you say, well, what can you do in the transfer portal, in the recruiting class? Well, we've already seen you overachieve for the situation that you've been dealt. What's next? The next couple of years. You can kind of, it's different because one's more long-term, one is right now, but you have your foundation, you have your talent, but you have your ways to get better. And they're tangible, they're realistic. It's not pie in the sky, trade for Myles Garrett type stuff. It's, hey, make a move to make the defense more solid and better utilize Marvin Harrison Jr. For ASU, it's, hey, get Sam Levitt another wide receiver, get him some more weapons, and maybe shore up your defense a little bit. Your secondary has lacked a bit, right?
And maybe the backup quarterback position.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Maybe
probably.
somebody that can come in and move the chains at that position. But look, that's where you start to look to add depth pieces, glue guys. Like you don't have to say, hey, we have to go out there and get a game wrecker on defense, or you have to go out there and get somebody who's going to make explosives on the offensive side of the football.
Pew, pew.
Yeah, I mean,
Pew,
look,
pew.
shots, explosive. Look how far we've come.
We really have.
Look at us. It's
Look at us.
unbelievable. We're Paul Rudd on Hot Ones. I think that this now, like, what's the expectation for both these football entities before the end of the season? Because I'll say this, the way that the Cardinals, like, rest of their schedule stacks up, like, if they miss the playoffs, like, something went wrong.
You could be a little disappointed.
It could be. And I think that's obviously fun, but a little terrifying. But I think that now the expectations have risen given their 3-game win streak and what they've shown and what potential they still have left, especially on the offensive side of the football.
I'll tell you what, the change of expectations can be scary because we have seen that shift for ASU. Again, this is a team that was picked bottom of the Big 12, last in the entire conference out of 16 teams. Right now, again, they're 6-2, but a couple of weeks into the season, 3-4 weeks into the season, we start having this conversation about, okay, well, we're happy that we're better than we thought, but we can't judge this team based off of how everybody thought they were going to be beforehand. You have to look at the product in front of you. So a piece of advice maybe is somebody who's more ahead in their season, right? Closer to the finish line and has seen those expectations shift is just embrace it. Have fun with it because you're already you're playing with found money a little bit when nobody expects you to be that great, right? And you're already surprising teams, but lean into it. Talk about the ways. I mean, not that you're not doing this, but you can get better. And while you can maybe accept that, hey, we shouldn't have our expectations to the ceiling. ASU shouldn't be talking about winning the Big 12 and going to the college football playoffs, despite it, technically still being on the table. Cardinals shouldn't be talking about winning a Super Bowl, despite it technically still being on the table. But your expectations are no longer just, can we just not suck?
Right. Can we compete this week?
Can we make the playoffs? Right. Can we win a playoff game? Right? Can we continue to get better? And I think that's the exciting part about all of this is that you're nowhere near the end. And the signs are so promising.
Well, and the resiliency from both teams, right? Where, I think after ASU suffered the first loss of the season to Texas Tech, correct?
Yeah.
And then, the Cardinals are 2-4. You're like, okay, it's back to reality.
Yeah, was the fun mirage just there for a second?
Are we back to slumming it again? Is this another lost season? And is just this, part of the rebuild and we have to wear it again? And then the same thing goes for ASU where they immediately rebound it with a win. I think that shows kind of the mettle of these two football teams that, they can be down, but they're not out. And they have the ability to fight forward even if they face a little bit of adversity.
Well, if you want to continue to follow along throughout the Arizona Cardinals season as they're first in the NFC West, following their massive win against the Chicago Bears, whether you're listening in audio or you're on YouTube, you can find PHNX Cardinals live 5 days a week, including pregame, halftime, and a postgame show, all right here on PHNX Sports. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button. Of course, I, Erik Ruby, will be on PHNX Sun Devils 5 days a week. Basketball season starting as well. Very exciting stuff. Follow along on the ASU feed on audio. Hit it 5 stars right here on PHNX Sports. Plus, you can catch me on PHNX Suns as well. We got a post-game show tonight as the Suns take on the 76ers. Hopefully, Gerald doesn't get punched by Joel Embiid. And you can follow along for the rest of our season right here. All the coverage you need for all your favorite teams only on this channel. We are the only people doing it this way, and we can promise you that. I don't know what we're talking about later this week, but I promise you there will be another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.